Hi, my name is Jesper. Today I want to talk to you about Zero Touch Deployment with Jamf. If you've seen one of our previous sessions or a demo, you might have heard us talk about parts of Jamf. Things like getting devices into student hands, by enrolling them, and maybe you've heard us talk about Jamf School and Jamf Safe Internet, how it can manage insecure devices. Finally, you'll have heard us talk about our apps, Jamf Student, Teacher, and Parent. These are indeed all elements of a great deployment that we offer here at Jamf. However, it can be hard to join all of these pieces together and see the experience the student has with their device. So today we're going to look at the experience of the student and the device in sort of a day in the life of kind of way, and without IT needing to do any touch of the device, so it's still a truly zero-touch deployment. So like any good story, we'll start at the beginning with enrolling and setting up a device. In our day in the life, we'll follow a student named Jack and his experience with the iPad. So first things first, this setup can be done at school or at home. It really doesn't matter and will differ from school to school. Whenever we turn on an iPad, we'll select which language and location the device has and connect it to Wi-Fi. This is what Jack is doing at the moment. Once connected to Wi-Fi, Jack's iPad activates with Apple, and this is where things start to look different and where Jamf really starts to take over. That's what Remote Management BETT talks about. Notice how Jack can't skip any of these steps to configure his device. Next, Jack is asked to log in to enroll. His school's IT department has decided that Jack needs to log in with his Microsoft credentials linked with Jamf School and Microsoft. What this means for Jack is that he just needs to use the same username and password that he uses for other school services. He hasn't got to remember anything yet. Once Jack is signed in and proven he is indeed a student at the school, he is linked to the iPad and is ready to roll his device. Jack's iPad starts to get the configurations from Jamf School without Jack needing to do anything too challenging. At this point, Jack is asked about location services, but this is the only window he will see. If you've set up an iPad before, you know that there's a whole bunch of windows you normally have to click through, but Jack School has decided to skip all those non-essential windows for smoother and quicker onboarding. Once Jack lands on the home screen, it looks like a pretty standard iPad, but if you keep a close look, you'll see and notice things start to jump around. Some of the Apple stock apps, like Tips or Stocks, aren't relevant to a student disappear. The wallpaper quickly changes based on what Jack School has configured too. This way, it's easy to spot a student device over a teacher. For the next bit, we've sped up the video for sake of time, but you'll see a number of core apps installed onto the device. Again, Jack has not had to do anything to start, and IT has not had any hands-on time with the device. There was no requirement for an Apple ID or password for these apps to install. Now notice how I said core apps? I was very specific with this. These are apps that are business critical and needed by everybody on a daily basis. We all know there's a saying, there's an app for that, but the idea of app overload is a real thing too. Many schools make the mistake of installing a whole bunch of apps on everybody's devices, even if they never use them or really targeted for different user groups. In some cases, schools deploy a number of apps that serve the same purpose and install them on every student device to give them the choice of using Pages, Word, or Docs. Not only does this cost pages and pages of apps that also take up valuable space on the device. Installing a huge number of apps at the enrollment also means the student could be waiting a long time before the device is ready to go. In Jack School, they have decided to just install the core apps needed by everybody on a daily basis, as well as the Jamf Student app. This gives Jack the ability to install more school-sanctioned apps when he needs them to make a choice between, say, Pages, Word, and Docs without needing to install all three on his device. For him, he only uses one of them. As well as giving Jack a list of apps he can install from the school custom app store, Jack School has also created these collections. These are a group of apps that are related to a certain subject, task, or, for example, Create has a host of drawing and design style apps, whereas Microsoft is a collection of the Office apps. Jack is able to download the apps individually or in a single click download all the apps in the entire collection. Again, notice how Jack does not need to enter his Apple ID or password in order to install apps from Jamf Student. Okay, so Jack has successfully enrolled and set up his device with Jamf and Zero Touch deployment. And by that, we mean that Jack drove the entire workflow and IT had zero hands-on time with the device. However, the setup on the device is just the start of Jack's experience with his iPad. So let's see what happens now that Jack has set up his iPad and goes to start the school day. Well, first notice that Jack has also installed some personal apps on his device. So this is something the school has agreed as part of his deployment. Now I know that this is not going to be the case on every school, but that's the decision Jack's school has taken to help students take ownership and responsibility of their devices. You'll see Jack has downloaded things like games, social media, as well as video apps like Netflix and Disney+, all of which could be distractions during the school day. Let's start the school day and see what Jack's experience is. The school is able to send additional configurations to his iPad when the school day starts. This limits the apps available for use, while the school ensures that the iPad is suitable for a learning tool without the distractions of personal apps, iMessage, or FaceTime. It happens pretty quick, so I've just highlighted where some of those personal apps like Instagram were before the school day started. The thing is, Jack is a child, and we know children try to get around these kind of rules. So now that Jack doesn't have any games on his iPad, the first thing he tries to go to is game sites. As we can see, Jack is blocked by going to a game website. This is because as part of the enrollment and setup, Jack's school has also deployed Jamf Safe Internet. Jamf Safe Internet is our DNS-based content filter, which ensures that students can only access appropriate content wherever they learn. This could be as simple as stopping the game or social media sites to ensure that students don't stumble upon inappropriate websites or images via Google search. But just to point out again, Jack didn't need to open an app or set up anything for this to configure on the device, and the IT department didn't need hands-on with the device either. Now that the school has started and any distractions from Jack's iPad have been removed, let's take a look at what his experience is of his lesson and bring the teacher's iPad too. On the teacher iPad, you'll notice Jamf Teacher app. The Jamf Teacher app is all about classroom management and managing those student devices that are part of this lesson. It's a tool to give the teacher the ability to control, focus, and drive learning during lesson time. You'll see here at the start of the lesson, Jack's teacher has locked his iPad into an attention screen, showing that the lesson is about to start and that he should pay attention to the front of the class. While this message is active, Jack cannot do anything on his device. When Jack's teacher is ready to start the first task and unlock the iPad, they're able to do this in just a few taps, making it super easy for his teacher to apply and clear restrictions as the lesson develops. As well as having the ability to setting things on ad hoc basis, Jack's teacher can define settings before the lesson starts and can focus learning further with a few taps. Even though the personal apps have been removed from Jack's device at the start of the school day, his teacher wants to remove further distractions and suggests the apps needed to complete the task in just their lesson. The Jamf Teacher app enables Jack's teacher to perform this in just their classroom without needing to put in an IT ticket. Now for this lesson, Jack has access to the tools and apps that he needs during this lesson. The Jamf Teacher app is best used alongside the Apple Classroom app, which can still be used to open up apps to guide students to particular websites, as well as view student screens or mirror student screens on Apple TVs for them. In addition to app control and attention screens, Jack Teacher can also be able to manage a bunch of devices settings during their lesson. For example, if Jack is usually allowed to use spell check on his iPad, but the task set in class today needs to assess Jack's spelling, the teacher can restrict this functionality, again, for just this task or lesson. When the lesson or task is over, Jack's teacher has the ability to either have the iPad return to the school time set up after a certain amount of time or clear their classroom settings whenever they need. Now Jack's iPad is back to the school time setup. He is able to move to the next lesson, and the next teacher has the ability to guide the lesson in the same way if needed. So we've seen what happened during setup, the school day ends and what Jack's experience is like during a lesson. This is not the end of the story though. If we're really going to look at the day and the life of, we need to consider what happens after the school day, when Jack goes home with his iPad. So what does Jack see when he ends the school day? When the school day ends, some additional configurations were added to the device and removed. That means that Jack has access to his personal apps and can now play his games and watch a little bit of Disney+. The thing is, if Jack's school has decided that iPad goes home, that likely means they want Jack to use the iPad to complete homework and continue to learn at home, as well as being able to use it as a personal device. Jack's mom and dad also wants to make sure that he's actually done his homework before he starts to smash his best score on Candy Crush. That's why Jack's parents has installed the Jamf Parent app on their device. The Jamf Parent app is very similar to Jamf Teacher app. It enables parents to further manage the child's device when it's at home to help guide the learning. So, Jack's mom and dad wants him to spend 1.5 hours doing homework once he returns home from school. Jack's school has communicated to his parents the apps that are required to complete the homework tasks. They are now selecting these apps, but the great thing is that the parent devices does not need to have the apps installed in order to select the apps they need or want Jack to have access to. Once they've selected the amount of time that they want these settings to last and the apps to display, Jack's iPad is ready to use for homework. Jack is about to start off his homework session the same way he always does, by checking his email. He notices he has an email from IT support and it says it's urgent. The email explains that the school has had a breach and that he needs to reset his password on the following link. Given that it's urgent, it sounds important, Jack taps the link and resets his password. Jack expects, like most of us would, that he'll end up at a Microsoft site. After all, the link was office365account.com. The email was an IT attack that was looking to get Jack to give up his username and password. We know from earlier in the school day that Jack's iPad has Jamf Safe Internet deployed. As well as being a content filter, Safe Internet also protects students against web-based threats such as web-based malware, spam, as we can see here, phishing attacks. Had Jack followed the link and entered his username and password, he might just have given a bad actor access to a school system where they could have attempted to gain access to other user accounts, working up to gain wider access and potentially accessing confidential data. Further to this, Jack might have used his email address and password for other services, which now would be susceptible to an attack. So it's a great thing that Jack's school thought not just about managing the devices, but also further to secure them no matter where the student is. So back to homework. While Jack is doing his homework, he'd really like to listen to some music. Jack's parents can add or remove additional apps during app lock period without needing to end the session and restart it again. So it's super easy to amend this for Jack's parents. So let's face it, Jack's not at school, so some background music might just be the thing that he needs for his own work to be done. If Jack finishes his homework before the timer, his mom and dad can disable app lock, which will return the iPad back to the personal use, or once the timer runs down, it will return to this state automatically. Jack's parents are okay with Jack using iMessage and FaceTime, which are allowed in personal time. However, if they weren't, the parent app gives them the ability to disable in personal time as well as the school disabling them during school time. This is really useful for Jack's school since they have a number of parents wanting their children to use iMessage and FaceTime, and there are some parents that don't want their children to have access to it. The school simply enables the apps during the school hours and have advised parents that don't want their children using them to disable iMessage and FaceTime with the parent app. Now Jack's parents want to set that homework session we've just been looking at every day at the same time. Using device rules, Jack's parents can configure these settings once and they will trigger every day. Using the parent app to guide Jack's learning is great, but Jack's mom and dad also use the parent app to enforce house usage rules. For example, they don't want Jack watching Netflix or Disney Plus after 9 p.m., but they don't mind him reading on his iPad. So although this rule doesn't relate to his learning, it's a useful tool for Jack's parents to have to help manage his screen time. Let's take a look at Jack's parents' settings up in bedtime rules. First, They name the rule and they choose the apps they want to make available for Jack. In this case, it's just a clock app. If there's only one app selected, it locks the iPad into that app. Next, they select the day and time they want the rule to automatically apply. And then there's no need to go and set the rule every day. It's set and forget and easy to configure. You might be asking, why lock into the clock app? Well, simply during the hours of 10 to 6:30, the only thing that Jack can do on the iPad is watch the time tick by, and you'd hope he would encourage him to go to sleep. And having access to the clock means he can set an alarm for the next morning, get up, get to school, and do it all over again. So all you can see is there's a multiple element within the Jamf platform that made up Jack's experience. The zero-touch self-setup of the device was one element. The silent installation and policy configuration of safe internet is another. We used the Jamf School console to deliver the time-based workflow to create a school time-focused device while giving Jack a different experience outside of school. And of course, Jamf teacher and parent played a big part in his experience too. If we look at each element on its own, sure, it's interesting, but it's not always clear how they fit into the big picture of what Jamf can deliver and how we manage and secure Apple devices. Empowering students and teachers with the Apple device they crave.